Shortly, you'll hear from the man in charge of the Wellington Free Ambulance service, and you'll also hear from a former ambulance officer with his own disturbing story. But first, Genevieve Westcott takes us back to Wainuiomata, where a young mother's life hangs in the balance.
Gary here.
Gary.
Wainui.
Yeah.
Basic status 5.
It's now status 5.
Status 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Status 5.
The patient is dead.
And it is 9:16. Well over an hour from the first call for help. When you look at how much time went by, how long it took, what does that tell you? A paramedic never arrived there, did they?
There's no paramedic there. It was disgraceful. Nothing was done for that patient. They don't give a shit. They don't care. She has died. We're talking about a 27-year-old female, 27 years old.
With 2 young children.
And my question to you or to them is, what would they have done if it was their sister? If their sister lived in Wainuiomata, would he have sent a paramedic then?
What do you think?
Well, we would have dispatched everything. That's what he would have done. That's what he would have done. It's bordering on criminal what's gone on there on that particular job. And the point I'd like to make is that this isn't an isolated case. It's not isolated. This goes on all the time and nothing's being done about it.
Are you aware of any cases in your 18 months here of people dying because of a problem getting the right staff to them quickly enough?
No, I'm not.
Steve Nixon, Chief Executive Officer of Wellington Free Ambulance. You're not aware of any cases?
No.
Does that mean it doesn't happen?
No, it doesn't.
What does that mean then?
It means that if they do happen, they aren't brought to our attention.
To our knowledge, no complaints were laid about this incident. Did you investigate that woman's death?
We didn't investigate the woman's death, but we certainly looked at our response on the day because it wasn't as good as we would have liked it to have been. We don't investigate every job, and we didn't investigate that job.
When we first approached Mr. Nixon for an interview, he asked us what incidents we wanted to discuss so he could be sure of his facts. We told him we wanted to talk about Wainuiomata.
Yes, Kevin. I've had a car turn right in front of me. I've taken bloody wild evasive action. I've managed to miss everything except I've clipped the curb. Yeah.
We asked Steve Nixon about the RRU that crashed en route.
They had an accident, and it took a few minutes to realise that the vehicle was immobile, would not be able to be driven on.
Was the car damaged?
The car was damaged and was undrivable.
So he was out of commission.
He was unable to proceed to the scene.
Do you think bloody hard.
Do you think you can drive through?
I can drive through. I had to
But we know that paramedic drove all the way back to headquarters in Wellington, a far greater distance than carrying on to Wainuiomata.
Ambulance comm centre.
Dion here.
Yes, Dion.
We have 451 here, please.
451?
Yep, we need the helicopter.
Okay, landing site.
Was a helicopter dispatched at all for this woman?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Wrong again. A helicopter was eventually sent after a lengthy delay. But we wanted to know if the helicopter should have been dispatched when the officer first requested it.
He would have got one.
He would have got one. What is the protocol? I mean, if an ambulance officer is at an emergency and calls in looking for certain resources, should the controller listen to that?
It's the control room's function to supply the resources. So if the ambulance officer at the scene requests a helicopter, it's not for the control room to question that, to simply action it.
But we know it wasn't action when first requested, nor did it have a paramedic on board, as it should have. We also wanted to know when exactly other vehicles had arrived. Mr. Nixon consulted the records.
No, it doesn't give the times.
So it's hard to know what the real picture was. You don't have all the information.
No, that's the inadequacy of the computer-aided dispatch system we have. It doesn't give the information that we would like to be able to evaluate all our jobs.
Yeah, we'd be pretty close on that.
But Mr. Nixon only had to listen to the tape you heard earlier or examine the end-of-day report as we had. Both clearly indicate arrival times. Now remember, The first ambulance officer to arrive was a primary care officer, totally out of his depth in caring for a cardiac patient.
Was the ambulance officer who went to that woman properly qualified to defibrillate her? Because there was a defibrillator in the ambulance.
My understanding is that they were qualified to defibrillate, but not on the defibrillator that we had.
So he couldn't use the equipment you had, could he?
No.
Again, maybe you needed a paramedic.
What we needed was somebody who could defibrillate, and in our service that's someone who reaches the intermediate care level or our coronary care level.
There's a lot of people there working there who have very little qualifications and who are really thrown in the deep end. I mean, they're people that are going to patients who are in cardiac arrest, whose hearts have stopped, and all they can do is do CPR for them. They can't even use a defibrillator.
How does he know? Because for 8 years, Tim O'Neill was an ambulance officer there, until this year, when he quit.
You're unsupported, and when people are getting substandard care.
Tim is in dispute with the ambulance service. He told us it was the death of a little 9-year-old boy in his care that changed him forever.
I watched him die, and it had a profound effect on me, and it was like the last straw.
It happened last December, 6 months before the Wainuiomata tragedy. Tim O'Neill was the sole ambulance officer on duty at Upper Hutt Station, with an inexperienced volunteer as an assistant. In the early evening, Tim was dispatched to an incident in Upper Hutt, the accidental hanging of a little boy who'd been swinging on a banister. It took Tim less than 4 minutes to reach the scene.
He was lying at the foot of the stairs, and he had his mother and father there with him, and they were absolutely beside themselves, as they should be. You know, it was terrible. But he wasn't blue. He still had a good colour to his face. And the fact that I'd seen him take a couple of breaths indicated to me that it was quite viable. He was quite, if you like, salvageable. And for about a minute or two, I aggressively worked on his airway to clear it.
But nothing was working. You needed someone with a lot more skills. You needed a paramedic.
Right.
Just like the ambulance officer in Wainuiomata, Tim O'Neill didn't have the skills he needed to help the patient. He wasn't a paramedic. A paramedic could have cleared the boy's airway by intubating him. And just like Wainuiomata, Tim O'Neill had to call the controller more than once for help. He also requested the controller find a paramedic living nearby. At least 4 lived in the area, but he says that request was never actioned. So, with growing frustration, he waited for a paramedic to travel from Lower Hutt, 15 kilometers away.
I think it took about 16 or 17 minutes to drive there. Even with your lights and sirens on, even doing 160 k's, it's a big distance. It's just too long.
Tim kept the boy's heart beating, using drugs until the paramedic arrived. And in less than a minute, the paramedic cleared the boy's airway and he was breathing again.
Now, at that point, I just wanted to hit the roof because I was thinking, yeah, well, it's great, but it's just too late. You know, I think I actually cried at the job because it was just...
Apparently the tears were just rolling down your face.
It was terrible. It was like, you know, it's like it's easier to take if somebody's dead. You know, it's tragic and you think, well, they're dead, nothing I can do about it, it's just meant to be. But I think what was so bad in this case was the fact that I really feel that he was salvageable.
The boy was flown to Wellington Hospital by rescue helicopter and placed on life support. He was diagnosed as brain dead. 2 days later, his family switched off the life support.
You know, I have to live with the fact that should I have tried to intubate him myself, you know, would that have saved his life? Might not have, but I just want you to see the sort of position that not that I'm being put into, but other ambulance officers are being put into, and the blame lies with the management system. You know, they should know these things. They should have double crewing. They should have their areas covered better. The RRU the RIU project needs some serious attention. It's not a good idea, and people are suffering as a result of it.
Tim O'Neill voiced his concerns about the incident to his bosses. For him, it was a crucial turning point. But for his bosses, it was, well, just one of those unfortunate events that goes with running an ambulance service.
Did you investigate what happened that night with that little boy?
We don't investigate every job. We're too lean in the management structure to routinely go through every job.
But this was a child who died. I understand Tim O'Neill went to his operations manager and expressed his concerns.
I think the child got every resource that Wellington Free could provide on the evening.
All up, it took at least 16 minutes for the paramedic to reach that child. Now, if that had been your little boy, would you have been happy with the response?
I think I would never be happy with the response if my little boy died, but I think what I would do afterwards is have a look and say, could the response have been better, realistically? And if it was a case of mismanagement, then I'd be unhappy. If it was a case of this is all the resources provide, then that's something we have to accept in the health system.
That is going to be cold comfort to the family of that child.
I understand that, but unfortunately we can only provide the service for which we receive funding, and in fact, we don't receive funding for the level of service we currently provide.
Mr. Nixon, in light of everything we've talked about, how can the public be confident that their health and safety is in good hands with Wellington Free Ambulance?
I believe it is. I have every confidence in the level of service provided by the Wellington Free Ambulance staff, and I believe the public has every right to believe that as well.
For the past 70 years, the public has believed it, and probably most people do get good service from Wellington Free Ambulance. But what about that 9-year-old boy and that 27-year-old mother? Surely they deserve better care.
Place wants gutting. They've got away with it for far too long. There will be ambulance officers out there who will hate me, but I feel the public need to know what's happening in their city. I don't care who I upset, I really don't. People die, and I'm here for those people.
I left for selfish reasons. I left for my own sanity. I love the job. I love doing it. I don't think I'm bitter and twisted, but I really feel that if anything good comes out of this program is that the people will look at the Wellington Free Ambulance and say, I expect better.
I'm also here for the good ambulance officers who do care, but we need to be taken over. The organisation needs to be taken over. It's not going to be sorted by management or strategic planning. They're not listening. I should have done this a long time ago. I feel relieved that I've told somebody.
And their handling of 2 disastrous call-outs.
It's now status 5. Okay.
Status 5.
The patient is dead. Nothing was done for that patient. They don't give a shit. They don't care. She has died. And the point I'd like to make is that this isn't an isolated case. It's not isolated. This goes on all the time, and nothing's being done about it.
Unfortunately, we can only provide the service for which we receive funding.
I should have done this a long time ago. I feel relieved that I've told somebody.
After that program was broadcast, there was a public outcry, and Wellington Free Ambulance boss Steve Nixon announced that as a result of Genevieve Westcott's investigation, there will be an independent, albeit internal, inquiry into the service's handling of the Wainuiomata case, and the findings will be made public. One of the first letters we received was from Vince Thompson, Wellington Free Ambulance delegate for the Amalgamated Workers Union. I do not want to minimise the very real tragedies of the 2 cases shown, but I do question your motives in selectively sensationalising them with the sanctimonious wisdom of 2020 hindsight. In a perfect world, ambulance controllers would be handling only 1 call at a time. Any who think that such idealism can be guaranteed from a free, on-demand emergency service operating in a climate of resource constraints delude themselves. Meanwhile, other viewers had no hesitation in making their feelings known. N. Davidson of Dunedin had this to say: "This is not an example of an ambulance service being unable to do its job through lack of resources. It is an example of a service which is grossly mismanaging its resources. It's time the service and its staff are held accountable, as are doctors, lawyers and police." And for Ms. A. Murphy, who lives in Wainuiomata, the program had special significance. "The more I saw, the more horrified I became. Steve Nixon claimed that as far as he was concerned, everything that could be done, according to the financial resources available, was done. My feeling is that no matter how much money the service has, it would not improve the attitude of the controller featured and any others like him." Finally, 5 Wellington Free Ambulance staff are on leave as a result of the Wainuiomata incident highlighted in our 2020 program. One, the ambulance officer who attended the call-out, has taken leave at his own request. The 3 staff in the control room at the time are on special leave, as is the communications centre manager who debriefed the staff after the incident. That's this week's edition of 2020. We'll be back next Sunday, 6:30 on 3. Thanks for joining us. Until next week, good night.